All right, so get ready, because today we are taking a deep dive into the world of slang. And I gotta say, sometimes it feels like I'm always trying to crack a code,
Right.
especially with like new phrases popping up, like what feels like every other day. But that's why we're doing this deep dive, right? To break it all down, how it works, why it even matters, and like, I guess most importantly, how to just navigate this whole ever-changing linguistic world.
You're so right. Slang is definitely dynamic. It's colorful. It's always evolving.
Yeah.
And it's more than just it's more than just a bunch of words. It's really like a window into culture and creativity and just like how we connect with each other.
Exactly. It's like having a secret language that helps you connect with certain groups of people.
That is such a great point.
Yeah.
So at its core, slang is just informal language
Yeah.
that's used within specific groups. Think of it as a way to signal belonging, to express yourself
Mm.
in a really unique way, or even just to add a little flavor to those everyday conversations.
Okay, I see, I see. But like, why do we even bother with slang in the first place? Why not just stick to like, regular words?
That's a great question. So think of it this way. Sometimes you wanna.
Yeah.
You wanna express a feeling or an idea with more impact. And slang can totally help you do that. Like, let's take the word lit, for example. Saying that party was lit
Hmm.
has like a totally different energy than saying that party was enjoyable.
Oh, yeah. Lit definitely paints a more vivid picture.
For sure. And that's really where like the power of slang lies. It lets you convey emotions. It lets you create a sense of shared understanding. And it just adds this layer of personality that formal language sometimes just doesn't have. It's all about adding that extra oomph to your communication.
Okay, but here's the part that I find mind-boggling. Slang changes so fast. I feel like I just learned one term and then boom, it's already outdated.
Yeah.
Who can anyone keep up with that?
That's the fascinating thing about slang. It's a reflection of how language just constantly evolves.
Yeah.
And to really understand it, you have to really look into the sources that are driving those changes. And a major player in this is youth culture. Teens and young adults are often like at the forefront, pushing those boundaries and just experimenting with language in really creative ways. Think of it like a linguistic laboratory
Mhm.
where new terms are just constantly being invented and tested out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they're definitely not afraid to break the rules and try new things.
Absolutely. And then you have the influence of pop culture, like music, movies, TV shows. These mediums constantly introduce new slang terms
Hmm.
into the mainstream. Think about all the catchy phrases or words that you've picked up from your favorite shows or songs. It's almost inevitable.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of picking up a phrase here and there from movies.
We all do. And let's not forget about the powerhouse that is the internet, especially social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. These are like breeding grounds for slang, where new words and phrases can spread so fast in a matter of days, thanks to viral trends and memes. Do you remember no cap, meaning no lie or for real?
Oh, yeah.
That one like exploded on TikTok,
Hmm.
and then it just quickly made its way into like everyday conversations.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It seemed like everyone was saying no cap all of a sudden. So by understanding all these different forces that shape slang, I guess we can kind of get a better grasp of how language evolves and how different groups use it to connect with each other.
Exactly. It's like a puzzle.
Yeah.
And by understanding the pieces, the sources, the motivations, the evolution, you can unlock like a deeper understanding of not just slang itself, but like the cultural and social dynamics that drive it.
Okay, so we've talked about what slang is and why people use it. But for someone who might feel a little out of the loop, like how do you even begin to like learn and use slang without feeling awkward or using it the wrong way?
That's a great question. And it's a super common concern. Um, I think the best approach is to start by listening and observing. Pay attention to how people use slang in different contexts, movies, music, and social media like we talked about. They're excellent resources for this. Think of it like immersing yourself in the environments where slang thrives.
Soaking it all in, just like learning a new language by living in a new country.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions. If you hear a term you don't understand, ask someone you trust to explain it. People who are into slang often love to share their knowledge. Think of it as like a fun little linguistic exchange.
Yeah, it's like being let in on a secret.
And here's like a crucial tip. Start slowly. Don't try to use every new slang word you hear like right away. Use terms sparingly at first until you feel more comfortable and confident. You don't want to overdo it or use them in the wrong context. I think we've all been there trying to force a slang term into a conversation, and it just falls flat.
Oh, I've definitely had those moments. It can be a bit awkward, but I guess it's all part of the learning process.
It definitely is. And thankfully, there are tools to help you stay updated. Language apps, websites, and even slang dictionaries can be incredibly helpful. Think of it as having a slang cheat sheet right at your fingertips.
Oh, that's a good idea. I never thought about using a slang dictionary before. So it's all about being observant, asking questions, starting slow, and maybe having a few resources handy to help you navigate this ever-evolving world. But most importantly, don't be afraid to laugh at yourself along the way. Language is about learning and experimenting, and just having fun.
I couldn't agree more. Embrace those awkward moments. They're all part of the journey. And remember, context is super key when it comes to slang. The same word can have such different meanings, depending on who is saying it and where. This is where it gets really interesting, especially for someone who wants to truly grasp the nuances of language.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like the word tea, for example. Sometimes it literally means the drink, and then other times it means gossip.
Tea is the perfect example. It all depends on the situation and the people involved. So just being aware of the context is so crucial to avoid misunderstandings and to just use slang effectively.
Okay, before we move on, I'm curious. Do you have a favorite slang term right now? Something that just makes you smile when you hear it?
Oh, you're really going to make me choose? Okay, let's see. Lately, I've really been into big mood. It's just so concise, It's a perfect way to say, I totally get that, or that's exactly how I feel.
I love big mood too. It's so relatable. Mine right now I think is vibe check. It's like my go-to to figure out how someone is feeling without being too direct.
Ah, yes, vibe check, a classic.
Mhm.
It really highlights like the playful and adaptable nature of slang, doesn't it? It's amazing how these terms can become such like shorthand for these really complex emotions and ideas.
Speaking of complex ideas, I'm curious to dig a little deeper into how slang actually like evolves. You mentioned that youth culture and pop culture are major drivers, but like what are the actual processes involved? How do new words get created, gain popularity, and sometimes just disappear?
You've hit on a truly fascinating aspect of language evolution. It's kind of like a linguistic ecosystem in a way,
Yeah.
with new terms constantly like emerging, competing for survival, and sometimes even going extinct. One really common way new slang is born is through a process called blending, which is where two existing words just combine to create something totally new. Like, think about hangry, for example. It perfectly captures that feeling of being so hungry
Yeah.
that you actually get
Oh,
irritable.
hangry. Yeah. We've all been there. I've definitely been there a few times for sure. So blending is one way. What are like some other ways that slang emerges?
Another really common mechanism is semantic shift, where an existing word just takes on like a new meaning. In a specific context, the word sick, for example, has gone through quite the journey. I mean, originally it referred to illness, but now in slang it can mean awesome or like impressive.
Mhm.
It's really fascinating how like the same word can hold such different meanings depending on who is using it and where.
It's amazing how adaptable language can be, but how do these like new words or new meanings gain popularity and spread? It can't just be random, right?
You're so right. It's not random at all. There's definitely a social element to it. Think of it like a virus, in a
Okay.
way. A new slang term needs like the right conditions to spread. It needs to be catchy. It needs to be memorable. And it needs to be easy to use and often has to resonate with a specific group or subculture. And of course, it needs exposure.
Exposure, yeah, that makes sense. So social media and pop culture play a huge role in that exposure, right?
Absolutely. Social media is like a superhighway for slang. A new term can go from being used by just a small group of friends to being heard by millions in just a few days, thanks to like viral trends and memes. And pop culture, especially music and movies, can introduce new slang terms to a much wider audience.
It's almost like slang has its own life cycle. It's born, it spreads, it peaks in popularity, and then sometimes it fades away. Why does some slang stick around while other terms just disappear?
It's a bit of a mystery, isn't it? Some slang terms really manage to break free
Right.
from those niche origins, and they become like part of mainstream language, while others kind of just fade away. One factor that seems to play a role is usefulness. Like if a slang term fills a gap in our vocabulary, like if it expresses an idea or a feeling that we just didn't have a word for before, it's much more likely to stick around.
So slang that serves a purpose is more likely to survive.
That's the idea. And sometimes it's simply a matter of cultural relevance. Slang that reflects current trends, or values or experiences is much more likely to resonate with people and stick around, even if it's just for a little while.
That makes sense. So slang isn't just about using these cool words. It's about understanding how language adapts to our changing world. But with slang evolving so rapidly, how do we ensure that we're using it correctly and respectfully?
That's a really crucial point. And it gets to like the heart of why context is so important when it comes to slang. The same word can have completely different meanings depending on who is saying it, who they're saying it to, and the situation they're in. For instance, some slang is specific to certain communities or subcultures, and using it outside of those contexts can feel like inauthentic
Yeah.
or even disrespectful.
So awareness and sensitivity are key, especially when we're venturing into slang. That might be new to us or specific to a group that we're not a part of. It's about being mindful of the social dynamics and like the potential impact of our language.
You're exactly right. And that's why listening and observing are so important. It's about paying attention to how slang is used in its natural habitat, so to speak, and learning the nuances of its meaning within those contexts.
It's like being a linguistic detective, gathering clues and piecing together the puzzle of how and when to use slang appropriately. But let's talk about some practical strategies for deciphering slang, especially in contexts like social media or music lyrics. What are some tips for navigating those worlds?
One of the most valuable skills that you can develop is the art of contextual analysis. It's about looking beyond those individual words and paying attention to the surrounding cues, the tone of voice, the body language, the overall message being conveyed. Social media, for example, is full of visual cues like emojis, memes, GIFs that can add like layers of meaning to slang terms.
So it's about reading between the lines and taking all of those subtle cues into account.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask for clarification. If you're unsure about the meaning of a slang term, especially online, it's totally okay to ask for clarification. You could even frame it as like a learning opportunity, something like, hey, I saw you use this word. I'm not familiar with it. Could you explain what it means?
That's a great tip. It turns a potentially awkward situation into a chance to learn something new, and it shows that you're genuinely interested in understanding the language and the culture. But what about deciphering slang in music lyrics, where the context might be a little less obvious?
Music lyrics can definitely be tricky because they often rely on wordplay and metaphors and symbolism, which can make slang even more ambiguous. A good strategy is to research the artist or the genre, familiarizing yourself with their style, their background, and the themes that they typically explore can give you some really valuable insights into their slang usage.
So it's about understanding the artist's voice and the world they're creating with their music.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of community knowledge. Online forums, fan communities, and even music blogs can be such excellent resources for deciphering slang and lyrics. You can often find discussions or interpretations and even translations of slang terms that might be unfamiliar to you.
So it's about tapping into the collective wisdom of the music community.
Precisely. Remember, language is a living, breathing thing, and slang is a testament to its constant evolution. By approaching it with curiosity and respect and a willingness to learn, we can really navigate its complexities and appreciate its richness.
I love that. It's about embracing the journey and just appreciating like the creativity and ingenuity of language. But what about those moments where we feel like we're falling behind or like we're just bombarded with so much new slang that it just feels overwhelming?
It's completely normal to feel overwhelmed, especially with like the rapid pace of online culture. Remember, you don't need to know every single slang term. To be fluent in the language, focus on the terms that resonate with you, the ones that you find interesting or useful, and don't be afraid to let go of terms that feel outdated or just not relevant to your life anymore.
That's reassuring. It's about finding like our own comfort level and not putting too much pressure on ourselves to keep up with every single trend. But speaking of trends, I'm curious to know your thoughts on the future of slang. Like, what do you think are some of the trends or forces that will shape how we use slang in the years to come?
Predicting the future of language is a very tricky business. But if I had to speculate, I'd say that technology will continue to play a major role with the rise of AI and virtual reality. And who knows what other innovations are coming. I think we can expect to see new slang terms emerge that reflect those technological advancements.
So we might have slang terms for interacting with AI or for navigating virtual worlds or for all sorts of experiences that we can't even imagine yet.
Exactly. And I think we'll continue to see the influence of globalization and cultural exchange. As the world becomes increasingly more interconnected, I think we'll see more blending and borrowing of slang terms from different languages and cultures?
So slang could become even more diverse and dynamic, reflecting the richness of our globalized world.
Precisely. And I think social movements and activism
Hmm.
will continue to shape slang as people use language to express their identities and their values
Hmm.
and their demands for change. I think we can expect to see new slang terms emerge that reflect these social and political forces.
That's fascinating. So, slang isn't just a reflection of our current world, it's also a tool for shaping the world that we want to create. But with all of these trends and influences, how do we make sure that slang remains a force for good, a way to connect and express ourselves authentically?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it kind of gets to the heart of why we're so fascinated by slang. It's this like this constantly evolving reflection of who we are, both individually and collectively. But as with any form of language, it comes with responsibility, right? Oh, for sure. As we've been talking about, slang can be so powerful. It can like build connections, foster that sense of belonging, and even challenge like social norms.
Mm.
But it's so important to use it with awareness
Mm.
and sensitivity, understanding that words have impact and that context is everything.
Yeah, it's like wielding a double-edged sword, right? You can connect, you can create,
Yeah.
but you can also like exclude or offend, especially when we're dealing with slang that's rooted in specific communities or experiences that we might not fully understand.
You're so right. And I think that's where empathy and respect really come into play. It's about being mindful of the origins of slang, recognizing that some terms might carry historical baggage or cultural significance.
Mm.
That we need to be sensitive to. It's also about being willing to learn, to ask questions,
Mm.
and to engage in dialogue.
Huh.
When we encounter slang that we don't understand
Mm.
or that makes us uncomfortable,
Yeah, it's about approaching slang with a sense of humility and like a willingness to just listen and learn from others. I think it's also important to remember that slang, just like any form of language, can be misused or appropriated. We could be like critical consumers of slang,
yeah,
questioning its origins and its intent.
that is such a crucial point. It's about recognizing that slang isn't just this neutral set of words. It can be like imbued with power dynamics and social hierarchies and even prejudice. So it's on us to be aware of those dynamics and to use slang in a way that promotes inclusivity and respect rather than perpetuating harm.
It sounds like navigating the world of slang requires not just linguistic knowledge, but also a really good dose of social awareness and critical thinking.
Exactly. It's about being mindful of the impact of our words, being open to different perspectives, and just being willing to challenge our own assumptions. It's also about recognizing that slang is always evolving. So what might be considered totally acceptable today could be seen as problematic tomorrow. We need to stay informed, engage in dialogue, and just be willing to adapt our language as our understanding evolves.
That's a great reminder that language is never static. It's a fluid and dynamic reflection of our ever-changing world. So, what are some key takeaways for our listeners today?
I think the most important takeaway is that slang is so much more than just a set of cool words. It's a powerful and fascinating window into culture and creativity and social dynamics. And for you, the listener, as someone who's clearly interested in language, exploring the world of slang offers so many opportunities for discovery and insight.
Yeah, it's like embarking on a linguistic adventure, uncovering hidden meanings and deciphering those codes that shape how we communicate with each other. And as we've learned, it's an adventure that requires not just curiosity and a sense of play, but also like a healthy dose of respect and empathy and critical thinking.
For sure. And remember, the journey of language exploration is never really over. New words are constantly being coined, new meanings are always emerging, and the landscape of slang is constantly shifting. So stay curious, stay engaged, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Well said. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive into the world of slang. It's been eye-opening and just inspiring.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listener, we hope you enjoyed this exploration as much as we have. Remember, language is such a powerful tool, and slang, with all of its complexity and all of its dynamism, offers a really unique and fascinating way to connect, to express yourself, and to just navigate the world around us. So go forth, embrace that linguistic adventure, and just keep exploring the wonderful world of words. Until next time.